welcome to another episode. So this video is dedicated to each and every one of you who have messaged me on Instagram via my DMs or have reached out to me here on my YouTube channel with questions and queries to do with visiting Salerno on holiday this year. I have collated some of the frequently asked questions that I have received into this video in the hope that it can help you to have an incredible stay in what I consider to be one very beautiful Italian city. So without further ado, let's get into the video. Okay, so the first question that I've received is to do with the Amalfi Coast, because if you don't already know, Salerno is in a fantastic position for being able to easily access and explore the Amalfi coastline. So the question is, what are some tips for parking and driving along the Amalfi Coast? In all honesty, just don't do it. And I say not to do it for a number of different reasons. Firstly, for the traffic and the congestion. The Amalfi Coastal Road is very narrow and there are lots of twists and turns. And the problem is that when there are lots of cars, especially during high season, you are more than likely going to end up in a traffic jam, potentially for hours, because the problem is that the roads are so narrow that you cannot turn your car around and go back the opposite way. You have to sit it out for however long it takes. So it can cause a lot of problems, especially in the summer months. So for this reason, this year they have introduced a new traffic restriction measure which takes effect from around now, the middle of June, until the end of September. Every single weekend in the months of June, July and September, and every single day of August, which is considered to be the peak holiday month here in Italy, you will only be able to drive the 35-kilometre route from Vietri to Positano that makes up the Amalfi Drive, depending on the registration plate of your vehicle. So, for example, if your registration plate ends in an odd number, you will only be able to drive that route on days of the month that are odd numbers. If your registration plate ends in an even number, you will only be able to drive that route on days of the month where there are even numbers. Now, this measure has been introduced to try to combat the congestion that the Amalfi Coast experiences, especially at this time of year, but obviously it's in its infancy. This is the first year that this measure has taken effect, so I imagine there probably will be some kind of teething problems with it, but it is something extra that you now need to take into consideration if this is what you plan to do. So with this in mind, and also with the fact that if you do decide to drive along the Amalfi Coast, you will experience expensive parking if you are lucky to find any at all. It is a really big problem along the Amalfi when it comes to parking, and it's the reason why a lot of locals tend to find alternative means to explore. So I would suggest finding an alternative way of accessing the Amalfi Coast, and I have just the suggestion for you, and it is by boat. So Travelmar are a ferry boat service that operate regular services from Salerno to all of the Amalfi coastal towns, and they even offer excursions to further islands like Capri, for example. So it is a fantastic way to explore the Amalfi coastline in a fairly inexpensive way, certainly a lot cheaper than private hire. Please don't get confused, this is not a private hire boat, this is a ferry. It's almost like a bus but on the sea, so you know, bear that in mind, but it's fantastic. All of the boats have an upper deck and a lower deck, and the upper deck tends to be open, so you can have an incredible panoramic view of the Amalfi coastal line from the sea, which is absolutely stunning. I did this last year for the first time. I took a boat from Salerno to Positano. In fact, you can see the vlog up here, and it was so breathtaking that ever since then, when I've needed to go to the Amalfi, I have tended to take the boat. So it's definitely something that I recommend. You avoid the traffic, you avoid trying to find parking, and obviously the expense of parking itself if you are lucky enough to find it. Now, the point that I recommend if you are staying in Salerno, depending on where you're staying in Salerno, the majority of services operate from Concordia, which is very close to the train station. So the vicinity in terms of the centre, you can easily walk to it if you are staying in the centre of Salerno itself. And as I've said before, I'm going to put the link below so you can have a look at the timetable, the prices, but it's definitely an easier way to explore the Amalfi and far less stressful as well, I would suggest. If you are set though on going along the Amalfi Coastal Drive, it is iconic after all, I totally understand why you might want to do it, then an alternative to driving yourself would be to take the bus. Now, the bus operator that covers that particular coastal line is Sita. Now I'm going to put the link below to the Sita website, but essentially you need to be aware of a couple of things. Firstly, the timetables. Now, unlike perhaps in your country, certainly in the UK, you can go to a bus stop and there are timetables available for you to look at and understand when the next bus might be coming. Here in Italy, it doesn't work that way. The bus stops along the Amalfi Coast are often in very remote places. So with this in mind, you don't often have a timetable, you literally just have a pole with a Sita sign and that's it. So with this in mind, you need to have downloaded a copy of the timetable before you start your journey. Now pay attention to the timetable. It's not as straightforward as it might appear. There are letters and codes that indicate holiday days, festival days, and when there might be a reduced service. So make sure that you are looking at the right part of the schedule. You can, if I remember well, translate it into English, but it's pretty easy to understand anyway. I've been able to do it with my basic level of Italian. So yes, I would suggest that you download a copy first and you understand what time your bus departs, and most importantly, when your last bus back is. This is key. Don't wait to get to the bus stop to discover this, because you may be sorely disappointed. That aside, if you are staying in Salerno itself, I recommend that you take the bus from Vietri, which is the bus station here in Salerno. Central bus station, very close to the train station, but it's where the buses begin their journey, and you are more likely to get a seat on the bus if you take it from this place. A lot of tourists will take the bus from the train station, but unfortunately, by the time the bus arrives there, it's usually busy and you're more likely to have to stand for the majority of your journey. So if you want a better chance of getting a seat, go to Vietri. There's also an office there where you can buy your bus tickets too, so it's just easier in general. Now bear in mind that this bus does get busy, and if you're not standing on the way there, you may very well be standing on the way back. There are lots of twists and turns on the Amalfi Drive, so please be aware if you have a disability or you suffer some kind of discomfort, it may not be the most comfortable method of travel for you if you are made to stand, because honestly they cram you in like sardines on this bus because they don't run every 5 minutes. And so for this, if you miss one bus, you have a bit of a wait for the next one. So as much as it's an experience to say that you've been along the Amalfi Drive, it isn't always necessarily as picturesque as you might imagine it to be, especially if you are traveling now at the height of summer. So just bear that in mind. If you plan on visiting Vietri Mare, which is the home of ceramics and is the first Amalfi coastal town outside of Salerno itself, then I actually recommend taking the train. You can take the train from Salerno train station. It's very fast, it's like around 5 minutes, if that, only a couple of stops. Very inexpensive, just a couple of euros, and you are taken straight into the heart of Vietri. In fact, if you watch this vlog up here, I took that journey myself last year and recorded it, and it was very beautiful. When you arrive at the train station, you take a glass lift full of ceramics, which is really amazing, down to street level, and then you are in the heart of Vietri itself, where all the ceramic shops are. And if you want to, you can walk even lower down and access with the beach and sea area. So this would be the method of transport that I would recommend from Salerno to Vietri if you're planning on visiting that beautiful ceramic town, which I highly recommend that you do. But yes, in a nutshell, I would avoid the stress of driving along the Amalfi Coast. By boat is far better if you really, really have to do it, the bus. But I actually think the boat is the best option overall. Okay, so the next question that I'm often asked is, what is the public transport like here in Salerno? Well, I actually think it's pretty good. So from Salerno train station, you can easily access the majority of cities and towns in Italy. So you can take trains to Naples, to Rome, to Milan, to Turin. You can even take trains further south to Sicily, to different regions in Basilicata, Sapri. It's actually really wonderful. We're very well connected here in Salerno, and it means that you can use Salerno as a base and at the same time get to explore other parts of Italy too. So in that respect, I think it's pretty good. Now, when it comes to buses, of course, as you already know from my previous question, you can take a bus along the Amalfi Coast. You can also take buses to Naples, in and around the Salerno area itself. However, with the buses especially, please be aware they don't always run to schedule, so sometimes they may be late. And as I've mentioned before, you need to pay attention to the timetable. Whereas with the train timetable, it's very clear and obvious when the trains are running. It isn't always so with the buses. So that is one thing you do need to pay attention to. You can get delays with the train, it's true, although in my experience, they have been very few and far between. But the majority of delays happen normally with the buses in terms of when they arrive. But I believe it's a good network nevertheless, and can certainly help you out if you don't fancy walking a particular route one day. For example, you can just hop on a bus and it will take you there. Not forgetting we have the boats as well, as I mentioned before, that can take you along the Amalfi Coast and even further afield to places like Capri with the special excursions that they organise over the summer months. And of course, if you are in the centre of Salerno, Salerno is a small city, so you can access most places on foot. And this is incredible because you don't have to go through the hassle of hiring a car unless you specifically intend to explore more remote places outside of the centre. For example, if you plan on visiting the Cilento coast or Paestum, those particular places, it's easier for you to have a car than it is to rely on public transport. So in those instances, you might consider hiring a vehicle. But if your intention is to just visit the Amalfi and to stay in and around the Salerno area, you honestly don't need to hire a car. You can reach most of the places on foot, and if not, you can utilise the public transport methods that I've already mentioned. So I actually think it is a fantastic city to explore for this reason. It's not vast, you don't have to worry about spending hours getting around, and for this reason I think it's actually a fantastic place to come to. So my next question is, what are some things to see and do in Salerno? Now, I've actually recorded a video recently all about this. I'm going to link it up here, where I actually share 5 must-see things to do in Salerno itself. Now today I'm going to add a couple of extra things to what is already on that video. So once you've watched this video, I recommend that you watch the other video so you can see the rest of the recommendations that I have for you if you're planning on visiting Salerno this year. Now, in addition to what's already on the other video, I recommend visiting the Duomo. This is the main church of Salerno itself. It's absolutely beautiful, but what is especially beautiful is the crypt. So underneath the lower level of the church, the crypt where the body of San Matteo lies, is absolutely stunning, and I thoroughly recommend visiting the Duomo just to experience that. Like, it's a really, really beautiful moment. Aside from churches, I also recommend experiencing a bit of real Salerno. So if you were to walk further south, maybe 25-30 minutes, if you take a leisurely stroll from the centre of Salerno, you arrive in the neighbourhoods of Torrione and Positano. Now, these are not typical tourist destinations. Tourists tend to stay in the historical centre and the main heart of Salerno itself. But if you want to get to the soul of Salerno as a city and you want to experience a real authentic Italian neighbourhood, these are the places that I recommend that you go to. Now, not only do you have an incredible view of the sunset from Positano, because the sea and the Lungomare itself just opens out more, so you have an incredible panoramic view, but also you experience a real life neighbourhood. So you get to see the different independent businesses, the places to eat, the beachside bars that you can take an aperitivo at. Like, it is a lovely place I would suggest for you to visit, just so you can experience some authenticity. Because one thing you know, if you've watched my channel for some time, is that I'm all about sharing real Italy. And that means that I'm not just going to tell you to stay in the historical centre. I'm going to encourage you to visit the suburbs if you like, and to experience a real neighbourhood, because that is when you truly get the essence of what this city is about. And honestly, it was the time that I spent in those areas that really helped me to fall in love with this city. So they would be my additional suggestions to what is already on this video right here. So make sure you watch that later for the rest of the suggestions of what you can see and do here. Oh, my next question. I've been asked this a lot. Where do I recommend eating in Salerno? So I have a little list, if you see me looking down, a little list of some places that I recommend you try if you are staying in Salerno itself. Now, the first thing I would like to point out is that I don't actually recommend eating at the majority of restaurants on Via Roma. Now, controversial, but I'm real. Via Roma, in my opinion, is very much a tourist spot. There are some fantastic places. In fact, one of these places I'm going to talk to you about is actually situated on Via Roma. However, there are quite a few restaurants along that stretch that are there typically just to cater to tourists. And as much as it's a business, and I believe in supporting businesses, I also don't believe in a tourist paying extra money just because they are a tourist. I believe you experience a real country when you go to where the locals go. So for this reason, I'm not in love with Via Roma. But if you want to know where there are lots of restaurants, you find them all here. Just be aware that 9 times out of 10 they are tourist traps. So you just have to be selective. that disclaimer aside, let me share with you my recommendations. So the first recommendation is Paninoteca Via Vai. Oh, I don't even know if I've said that right. I haven't even checked with the pronunciation. There we go. I'm just doing it regardless of mistakes. This is actually on Via Roma, but it's an incredible panino place to eat. So you can choose paninis with lots of different combinations and flavors. My favorite one is with chicken and peas. It's like a roast dinner in bread. It's beautiful, but there are lots of different combinations, and you can even ask and request some specific combinations if you have any dietary needs, for example. But it's a fabulous place. It's always really busy with locals, and they now have this upgraded seating area outside, which gives you a much better dining experience. So that would be my first recommendation if you want something light for lunch, or you're not particularly hungry, for example, for dinner, you just want something on the move. That would be the place that I would suggest. The second restaurant that I suggest is what I lovingly refer to as the Wine Fountain. Its proper name is La Botta Pazza, which means the crazy bottle, I think I'm right in translating. This place is insane. So there are two restaurants side by side. One is a meat restaurant, the other is the fish restaurant. There was a time after COVID where they combined the menus, and basically in whichever room you were sat in, you could have both fish and meat, but typically, traditionally, La Botta Pazza is the meat and their sister restaurant next door is the fish restaurant. But I love this because it's a typical Italian restaurant. The cuisine is beautiful, and do you know what I love the most? The wine is on tap. You have a tap that you take a little jug up to and you fill it up with free, I repeat, free house wine. Don't get me wrong, not filling it up with Mare, but you are filling it up with a decent house wine, and it's incredible, and that alone is an amazing experience. It's a lovely restaurant. However, it gets very, very busy. It's only tiny, so I recommend that you book. Make sure you book, because it's very rare for them to have any walk-in space. My boyfriend and I have discovered that on many an occasion. So make sure you book a table. This is one restaurant that I highly recommend visiting if you're here. The next two recommendations are of course to do with pizza, because hello, you are in the region where pizza is the best in all of Italy, I would hasten to add. So let's talk about Criscimuno, which is right next to the Duomo. The location is amazing, and it's a really beautiful pizzeria that offers some amazing pizza combinations. There is an amazing one with green peas, which I love. Bit of a theme here, but it's lovely. And the buffalo mozzarella pizza, oh my goodness, it's amazing. So yes, thoroughly recommend them. I'm going to put links below to these places so you can find them via Google. And another pizzeria is Michele's, which is a recent addition to Salerno. It's actually part of a chain. The original Michele's is in Naples, and if you ever watched Eat, Pray, Love with Julia Roberts, it is that same pizzeria that appears in the film that is their Naples branch. But now they've opened up one in Piazza Portanova, which is the main piazza in the heart of the Corso, and it's an incredible place to try. Now bear in mind their range is very limited. They're the experts in margarita, so they have a couple of different margarita-esque options, but that's about it. If you want to have something with a bit more variety, then you would go to Criscimuno, because that is the place where they give you some different combinations, and of course the views are amazing as well. But both pizzerias are fantastic, and so you absolutely have to try pizza while you're here, so here is my recommendation for you. Okay, so my last question for this video is of course to do with where do you go to have a drink? There are some lovely little places to drink, some cute bars, but my recommendations, first of all, Duomo. I'm going to put the links below. This is a really cute wine bar. This was one of the first places that I discovered when I spent my initial 4 weeks here in Salerno back in 2018. And it's a beautiful place. It's tiny. And when I first discovered it, they were only this tiny little room, and it was the whole like vibe. It was just like really, really intimate and wonderful. Now they've expanded and there's outside seating, really lovely, right beside the Duomo. So it's really beautiful, beautiful setting. You're right in the heart of the historical centre. They are wine specialists. You can have any different type of wine that you can imagine, and they also do some food as well that you can eat, but obviously like light food. You're not going here for dinner, you're going here to have like some side food in addition to your wine. So it's very much a refined experience, shall we say, but it's beautiful. And Francesco, the owner, speaks English, so hello, props to that, because I guarantee you not many places here do. So if you want a bit of an easy evening, I would suggest that you head there. The next place that I would recommend is Bar Verde. Bar Verde is a little bit further out. It's near Villa Comunale, which is the city park, but it's an incredible bar. And the reason I like it is because it's quirky. It's a bit vintagey. They have lovely breakfasts like cornetto, the croissants, but also if you go in there in the evenings, they do aperitivos and drinks, but it's lovely. And there's often live music, especially now, the post-pandemic. So with this in mind, it's a really wonderful place to go, and it kind of feels like you are in a Parisian street when you are sitting outside, especially in the late afternoon. It's just really wonderful. It's such a lovely vibe. I like that bar a lot. And then just because it's something to experience, I'm not completely sold on this place, but it is somewhere to experience. I need to look at this because it's complicated. Bear with me. Embarcadero. I hope it's right, Mamma Mia, this is getting ridiculous. Embarcadero, I think it is. It's a seafront bar right on the Lungomare, and it has the open rooftop as well, which they tend to open in the evenings. And even on like the lower deck, if you like, you can sit out and you can be right next to the water. So for its location, it's great. I do think it's a little touristy sometimes, but it's definitely somewhere to try. And the views are amazing. And actually I had a cornetto there a couple of weeks ago and it wasn't bad. It was nice. So yes, another place to try. So these would be my drinking destinations to experience. But honestly, Salerno is an incredible place, and I have a playlist with many other Salerno videos up here. If you have any other questions, please hit me up. There may well be a part 2. In fact, I'm probably certain there will be. And if you're thinking of moving to Salerno, if I've inspired you in any way, shape or form, then stay tuned because my next Q&A will be covering some frequently asked questions to do with that. Until the next time, happy holidays, enjoy Salerno, and I'll see you soon. Ciao, ciao.